A building manager destroyed centenarian trees without imagining he'd face the environmental commissioner. When the chainsaws silenced the fruit trees I had cultivated for 30 years, a silent war began. Between forged documents, unexpected alliances, and cruel retaliation, an entire community awakened to the importance of nature. A story of resistance, justice, and renewal that will inspire your fight for what you believe in. Prepare to be moved. Have you ever woken up to the sound of chainsaws destroying something you love? I did. And it wasn't a nightmare. It was the damn reality imposing itself at 7:15 a.m. on an ordinary Wednesday that turned into the day I lost a part of my soul. From the window of my ground floor apartment, I saw 3 hulking men in dirty uniforms cutting down the 3 centenarian fruit trees that I had cultivated for 30 years in the garden. 30 years. Do you know how long that is? It's almost a third of a life dedicated to watering each leaf, pruning each branch, harvesting each fruit from those majestic trees. And in 15 minutes, they turned into inanimate stumps on the ground. I've always considered myself a woman of principles. Since I was young, I believed that nature needs to be not just preserved, but revered, especially in these concrete blocks we call cities. I'm also known for my legendary patience, a trait that led me to the position of Municipal Environmental Commissioner at 65, after decades as a biology teacher. But at that moment, dears, all my hard-won diplomacy evaporated like dew in the summer heat. I shoved my feet into the first slippers I found, didn't even comb my grey hair, and ran out into the garden still in my pajamas. I, who never leave the house without lipstick. I screamed for them to stop that atrocity immediately. The men hesitated for a moment. The chainsaws briefly fell silent, but soon returned to their hellish symphony. "Orders from the manager," one of them mumbled cowardly, without the courage to look me in the eyes, cowardly, like all who destroy defenseless nature. Our condominium, ironically called Oakwood Gardens, of gardens now only the name remains, dears, had elected a new manager just 3 months prior. Robert Smith, a 58-year-old retired businessman with that kind of smile you only see in toothpaste commercials, a man who promised to modernize the place. Modernize? Ha! Since when does modernization mean decimating fruit trees that fed birds, local wildlife, and brought life to our vertical concrete desert? One of my most striking characteristics, besides the stubbornness I inherited from my Italian grandmother, is determination. When I decide something, I see it through to the end. Just ask any of my ex-husbands, and there were 2. At that moment, I decided that this presumptuous manager would learn a lesson about environmental respect that he would never forget. I climbed the 12 flights of stairs anyway, with enough adrenaline to ignore my arthritis. I arrived at his apartment out of breath, but with dignity. I rang the doorbell insistently, as if my index finger could transmit all my indignation through that button. He answered, impeccably dressed, jacket and tie, at 7:30 a.m. Who dresses like that so early unless they have something to hide? "Ah, the tree lady," he said with such visible disdain I could almost touch it. It had to be cut. They made the garden too dirty, and the regulations don't allow trees over 6 feet tall. Regulations? Regulations. Since when do internal regulations override municipal laws? I took a deep breath, adjusted my glasses, and replied with a calm I didn't even know I could feign at that moment. "Those trees were protected by municipal law that I myself drafted and signed. You ignore, Mr. Manager," I replied. "You have just destroyed specimens catalogued by the Department of the Environment." That's when I pulled out my trump card, literally. I pulled my official badge from the pocket of my floral pajamas. His plastified smile melted like ice cream on hot asphalt when I showed my identification. "Commissioner of the Environment?" No one informed me. And you know what? No one needed to inform him. The law is there to be known by everyone, especially by those who propose to administer properties with green areas. Ignorance of the law is no excuse, as my late mother used to say. May she rest in peace. There began a battle that would last exactly 1 year and transform our peaceful condominium into a Cold War battlefield. On one side, the preservationists, led by me. On the other, the modernizers, commanded by the manager with a fake smile and dubious character. To have war without physical violence, it's true, but full of cunning maneuvers, unexpected alliances, and revelations that would make a prime-time drama series look like a children's show. In the first month after the massacre of my fruit trees, the manager tried to intimidate me, a tactic as old as the trees he destroyed. He sent me an official notification full of whereas and in the exercise of his duties, alleging that the remaining plants in my garden invaded common areas and demanding their removal within 48 hours. The document ended with a veiled threat of a daily fine. I responded in kind. I prepared a complete technical report from the department with photos, measurements, and opinions from 3 different specialists, proving that my garden was not only within the norms, but was an example of sustainable urban management. I also attached a document detailing that the cut trees constituted an environmental crime with a potential fine of $10,000. I delivered it personally, with a smile as fake as his. "You're taking this personally," he said, flipping through the document without really reading it. "No, dear, I'm taking this legally, and believe me, it's much worse." That's when I realized I wasn't alone in that battle. Ms. Clara Johnson, an 82-year-old widow from the 2nd floor, owner of 7 cats and an enviable memory, came to see me. She knocked on my door one Sunday afternoon, bringing an old photo album, one of those with a leather cover and yellowed pages. "Look what I've kept all these years," she said, showing photos of the fruit trees in bloom taken over decades. There were pictures of children, now adults, climbing the branches, birds nesting, even a birthday party held in the shade of the trees in the 90s. "My cats loved to lie under those trees," she said, with tears in her eyes framed by glasses larger than her tiny face. "I want to help bring justice." Ms. Clara Johnson became my first ally, and soon we formed the self-proclaimed Oakwood Gardens Preservation Committee. The name was too pompous for a group that initially consisted of an elderly woman with 7 cats, an environmental commissioner, in pajamas, and 3 children from the 5th floor who joined the cause because we promised we would plant fruit trees again. During the first condominium meeting after the incident, the manager presented his grand modernization project. It was a PowerPoint presentation with so many special effects it looked more like a Hollywood movie than a condominium plan. The project included replacing all green areas with colored rock gardens and artificial plants. Yes, you heard right. Artificial. In the 21st century, with all the climate crisis we face, we will save water and maintenance, he argued, receiving applause from several residents, especially those who live on the upper floors and never come down to feel the grass under their feet. At that moment, I asked for the floor. The manager hesitated, but he couldn't deny me that right in front of everyone. I stood up, adjusted my scarf around my neck. I always wear one for important meetings. It gives me confidence, and presented a counter-proposal, a sustainable garden project that would reduce the water bill by 30% using rainwater harvesting systems for irrigation. Furthermore, I added with a smile that didn't reach my eyes, our condominium could become the first in the region to receive the green building certification, which would increase the market value of all apartments by at least 15%. This captured the attention of even the most uninterested, because if there's one thing every owner loves more than saving money, it's increasing their property value. I saw the manager adjust his tie, clearly uncomfortable. Behind the scenes, the war continued. I began investigating our manager's past, not out of revenge, mind you, for precaution. My granddaughter always says, "Grandma, know your enemies better than they know themselves." And you know what I discovered after 3 months? That our esteemed Mr. Robert Smith had a landscaping company registered in his wife's name. And guess who he planned to hire to carry out the renovations in the condominium? Bingo! It was a conflict of interest so obvious that even my 30-year-old parrot could identify it. I gathered the evidence, articles of incorporation, preliminary budget proposals, everything, and exposed it during an extraordinary meeting that I requested with a petition. The manager is proposing that we hire a company that belongs to his family without bidding and without presenting alternative quotes, I explained calmly, distributing copies of the documents. This, besides being unethical, could constitute administrative misconduct and illicit enrichment. Technical jargon always impresses, dears. Several residents switched sides at that moment, strengthening our cause. The manager, red as a beet, merely mumbled something about no legal impediment, and best market prices. In the 5th month of our condominium Cold War, I received an unexpected proposal. The manager invited me for coffee in the party room, neutral territory. He showed up with a genuine leather briefcase and a smile that tried to look conciliatory, but more resembled a crocodile from a toothpaste commercial. "Ms. Helen Miller," he began, using an almost paternal tone that gave me the creeps. "We are intelligent and mature people. We can resolve our differences without all this hassle." He opened the briefcase and showed a modified project, which included some few of my ecological suggestions. "We can work together," he said with that forced smile. "You withdraw your complaints, I implement some of your ideas. Everyone wins." I slowly sipped my coffee, observing him over my reading glasses. "You know, Mr. Robert, during my years as a teacher, I learned to recognize when a student is trying to manipulate me to escape a difficult test." I returned the project without even flipping through the following pages. Principles are not negotiable, not for all the gourmet coffee in the world. The tension escalated dramatically when, in the 6th month, I woke up one morning and found my garden completely destroyed. All the plants uprooted, the earth churned up as if a tractor had passed through. My little private paradise, which had partially survived the massacre of the fruit trees, now looked like a war zone. The security cameras, coincidentally, failed that night. The doorman, coincidentally, had to leave for a family emergency. For 2 hours, precisely the 2 hours the vandalism occurred. Too many coincidences for my taste, and I haven't believed in coincidences since I discovered my first husband, coincidentally, always worked late when his secretary stayed late too. The residents were shocked by the obvious retaliation. Even those who normally didn't get involved in condominium matters began to take sides, my side. Because it's one thing to disagree about tree size or garden type. It's a completely different matter to promote cowardly vandalism against a white-haired lady. I received visits of solidarity from almost every floor. Ms. Clara Johnson brought her cats to inspect the crime scene, as she put it. The children from the committee made protest posters that were taped in the elevator, much to the manager's fury, who removed them personally 3 times in a single day. In the 8th month of this saga, we had the traditional condominium summer block party, a celebration that was almost cancelled by the manager with the excuse of cost containment, but kept after vehement protests led by Miss Clara Johnson, who threatened to unleash her 7 cats in his apartment if the party was cancelled, an harmless but effective threat. During the party, with mulled cider flowing freely and hearts more open, the first major twist in our condominium drama occurred. Adrienne, a discreet resident from the 8th floor whom we barely knew, came up to me with a bombshell revelation. Working as a graphologist in the civil police, she had noticed something strange in the recent assembly minutes. "These signatures," she said, showing me copies she had kept. "Many are forged. Look at the strokes, the pen pressure, the slant. At least 8 signatures were made by the same person. Forgery of documents. The manager had forged approvals for his works." Everything made sense now. The speed with which he managed to get his proposals approved, even when several residents expressed disagreement. "I can prepare a technical report," Adrienne offered, "but I'll need the original signatures for comparison." That's when Mr. Gerald Brown, the condominium caretaker for 25 years, discreetly appeared beside us. A man so silent that we sometimes forgot his presence, but who knew every corner, every secret of that building. "Miss Helen Miller," he said in a low voice, "I've kept copies of all important documents from the last 10 years, including the original resident signature cards. The manager doesn't know this. Mr. Gerald Brown, the silent guardian of our condominiums, memories now became a key piece in our puzzle, and he had more to say. We met in my kitchen the next morning. Me, Ms. Clara Johnson, without the cats this time, Adrienne the graphologist, and Mr. Gerald Brown. On the table, besides an apple pie I had just taken out of the oven, there were folders and folders of documents. He not only forged signatures, Mr. Gerald Brown revealed, showing receipts and work orders, but he also overcharged for repairs and renovations. He bought third-rate materials and charged as if they were first-rate. And the worst part, the difference was used to do a complete renovation in his apartment. "How do you know this?" I asked, impressed by the amount of evidence. Because I was the one who carried the materials up there, thinking it was condominium service. Only later did I realize I was wrong, but I was afraid of losing my job if I said anything. Meanwhile, my devastated garden began to be reborn, not by divine intervention, but by the coordinated action of the residents who, on a sunny Sunday, showed up with seedlings, seeds, and gardening tools. A green guerrilla action that transformed vandalism into an opportunity for renewal. The children from the committee led Operation Revive the Garden, each responsible for a section. Even residents I barely knew by sight showed up to help. In a few hours, my small space was replanted with local native species, much more diverse than before. "Let's see him destroy this now," said Ms. Odette Moore, a 90-year-old woman who arrived, leaning on her cane and insisted on planting a cherry blossom tree personally. In the 10th month, the manager, surely feeling the ground slip away, made his most desperate and frankly most ridiculous move. He called a vote to expel me from the condominium, claiming I was disturbing the peace and inciting discord among residents. The assembly, scheduled for a Saturday afternoon, turned into a real improvised tribunal. On one side, the manager, in his impeccable suit and briefcase of official documents. On the other, me, in a floral dress and my inseparable scarf around my neck, surrounded by what was now an army of allies. The manager presented his accusations with the pomp of a prosecutor from an evening drama series. Constant interruption of the condominium's routine, harassment of the administration, improper use of official title for intimidation. Just when it seemed I might actually lose, as the vote was close, the party room door burst open with a dramatic crash. It was Marianne, the 32-year-old granddaughter of Ms. Clara Johnson, an environmental lawyer who works in the public prosecutor's office. She entered like a tropical storm, briefcase in hand, high heels clicking on the wooden floor. "Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Marianne Taylor, and I am here with a judicial injunction," she announced, handing an official document to the manager with a flourish that would have made any actress envious. "This document prevents any expulsion action against Ms. Helen Miller, based on the constitutional right to housing and the clear characterization of harassment." The manager paled, flipping through the document with trembling hands. The assembly erupted in murmuring. Marianne wasn't finished. "Furthermore, I am formalizing a complaint to the public prosecutor's office regarding the environmental crimes committed in this condominium, the forgery of documents and the misappropriation of funds. I suggest you suspend this absurd vote unless you want to add obstruction of justice to the list. I've never seen a condominium assembly end so quickly, and I've never been so proud to see how a personal injustice had turned into a collective cause. In the 11th month of our saga, while the official investigations proceeded under judicial secrecy, we decided to change tactics. Instead of just attacking, we decided to educate. We organized an exhibition in the party room with old photos of the condominium showing how the green areas had been part of its history since its inauguration in 1975. Titled Green Memories of Oakwood Gardens, the exhibition became a moving community event. Many elderly residents who rarely left their apartments came down to share stories about raising their children, playing under those trees, celebrating birthdays, finding comfort in nature during difficult times. "Under that cherry blossom tree, that was over there," pointed out Mr. Joachim Anderson, 94, a resident since the building's inauguration. "I proposed to my wife. She's gone now, but the tree was there to remind me of that day, until recently." We recorded all the testimonials and created a small documentary that was shown at the exhibition itself. The manager naturally didn't show up, but we learned from Mr. Gerald Brown that he watched the recording later, alone, when he thought, no one was watching. Did we strike a sensitive chord in that hardened heart? I doubted it at the time. Today, I'm not so sure. Finally, after exactly 12 months since that fateful morning I woke up to the sound of chainsaws, it was time for the election of a new manager. Robert's 2-year term had been cut short after proof of financial irregularities, which led him to resign to avoid a formal process. To my complete surprise, several residents came to encourage me to run. I, who had always preferred caring for plants over spreadsheets, I hesitated at first. My job at the department consumed a lot of time, and at 66, I dreamed more of retirement than new administrative challenges. "Think about it, Miss Helen Miller," insisted Adrienne, the graphologist. "Who better to rebuild our condominium than someone who fought so hard to preserve it? Besides," added Miss Clara Johnson with a mischievous smile, "you've already proven you have more energy than all of us combined." I ended up accepting more out of a sense of responsibility than personal desire. I ran against two other candidates, Mr. Paul Wilson from the 7th floor, a retired accountant with solid but uncharismatic proposals, and surprise of surprises, the former doorman Anthony White himself, who had been unfairly fired by the previous manager and now returned as a resident after buying a small ground floor apartment. The vote was close, but I won by 15 votes. In my improvised inauguration speech, I made sure not to mention past grudges. Instead, with the wisdom that only years give us, I presented a 5-year plan to transform Oakwood Gardens into the city's first self-sustaining condominium with solar energy, composting, and a community nursery. "We are not just recovering what we lost," I said, observing the attentive faces around me. "We are building something better to leave to our grandchildren and great-grandchildren." Because a condominium is not just a set of walls and roofs, it's a small ecosystem where human and natural lives can and should coexist in harmony. My first act as manager, you don't even need to guess. I organized a special ceremony to plant 3 new fruit trees in the place of the old ones. They wouldn't be the same, of course. Centenarian trees cannot be replaced overnight, but they would be the symbol of a new beginning, of a wound transformed into a lesson. Each resident was invited to add a handful of earth around the seedlings, from babies in their parents' arms to elderly men and women supported by canes and walkers. Everyone participated. Even Robert, the former manager, showed up, silent and visibly uncomfortable but present. When it was his turn to add earth, he hesitated for a moment. "Go ahead," I said softly. "Nature forgives, even when we humans have difficulty." He completed the gesture, and before stepping away, mumbled an almost inaudible sorry. It wasn't enough to erase the past, but it was a start. As I watched that small crowd gathered around the still fragile seedlings, I understood a profound truth. Sometimes we need to lose something valuable to discover how much other people also valued it. Those cut trees weren't just mine. They were a collective heritage that, upon being destroyed, awakened the community spirit dormant in the concrete of our condominium. Today, 2 years later, the fruit trees are still small, but they are growing, strong and healthy. Our condominium has already implemented rainwater harvesting, organic waste composting, and solar panels that have reduced the energy bill by 40%. The Preservation Committee has transformed into the Oakwood Gardens Ecological Club, with members of all ages. Robert moved away a year ago, but before leaving, he donated a significant amount to the Condominium Sustainability Fund. A late gesture of redemption, perhaps. I prefer to think that the seeds of environmental awareness we planted also found fertile ground in him. As for me, well, I continued at the Department of the Environment for another year and then retired. Now, I dedicate my time to giving lectures in other condominiums on how to transform urban spaces into greener and more sustainable areas. My story has become a small municipal success story. The children from the building call me Grandma Nature, and I accept the title with pride. Ms. Clara Johnson, at 84, and now with 8 cats, is my inseparable companion in these adventures. Mr. Gerald Brown continues as caretaker, now with the status of environmental consultant, and a small salary increase that I made sure to approve in an assembly. And you know what? That disaster that woke me up with the sound of chainsaws ended up awakening much more than my indignation. It awakened the consciousness of an entire community about the importance of our daily choices, about how every tree, every plant, every seemingly small decision can have a huge impact on the world around us. The other day, I saw a rare blue butterfly perched on one of the young fruit trees. I watched it for almost half an hour, mesmerized by that delicate dance of wings over green leaves. And I thought, how many battles in life seem lost until we discover they were just the beginning of a bigger war, a war we can win when we are not alone. If there is one lesson I would like to leave for you, my dears, it is this: never underestimate The power of a white-haired lady defending what she believes in. And never ever cut down a tree without checking if its owner happens to be the environmental commissioner. Believe me, it can save a lot of headaches, and perhaps even save some centenarian trees along the way. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go water my fruit trees. They are still young and need daily care. Who knows, maybe your great-grandchildren will harvest fruit from them in the future. And when they do, I hope someone tells them the story of the stubborn old woman who didn't let nature die without a fight. Because in the end, we don't just fight for what already exists, but for what can still exist. We don't just defend the past, but the future. A future that I hope will be much greener and more conscious than the present we have built so far. And you? Whose side are you on in this story? Because believe me, there are no neutral spectators when it comes to the future of life on Earth. Each of us is a protagonist. Each decision is a chapter in this collective narrative we are writing together. As for me, I chose my role a long time ago. I'm just a stubborn old woman who refuses to see the beauty of the world being destroyed in the name of progress. And if that makes me a rebel in the eyes of some, then so be it. There are worse things than being a rebel at 68. As the graffiti on the walls of Paris in May '68 said, "When I was just a young dreamy student, be realistic, demand the impossible." And what seems more impossible today than a world where humans and nature coexist in harmony? But I believe in that impossible. And I fight for it every day, one tree at a time, one battle at a time, one heart at a time. Because if there's one thing I've learned in all these years, it's that the deepest changes begin in the most unexpected places, like a condominium called Oakwood Gardens, where 3 centenarian fruit trees had to die so that hundreds of new trees could be born. And that, dears, is an equation I can live with in peace. Oh, and before I forget, that $10,000 fine for environmental crime, it was paid down to the last cent. And the money? It was fully invested in an urban tree planting project that now bears my name. Ironic, isn't it? As my Italian grandmother used to say, revenge is a dish best served cold. But I prefer to think it wasn't revenge. It was justice. Justice for the trees that cannot speak for themselves. Justice for the birds that lost their homes. Justice for the planet that suffers silently while we decide, day after day, what kind of world we want to leave for those who come after us.